What's up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. I am sorry. The reason why I'm saying sorry is because I know I haven't uploaded in a very long time. I haven't uploaded in 3 weeks or 3 or 2. But today we're gonna be reacting to Story Animated. And make sure to hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you never miss when I upload one. And make sure to subscribe, and make sure you go subscribe to my friend's channel called I Love Man God. And make sure to subscribe to my other friend's channel called Mike Plays. Yeah. And the first story we're gonna react to is I have been in a coma for years. I could hear everything. Okay, let's get into it. Let me turn this up for y'all.
Hi there, I'm Aria. Imagine yourself not being able to say, I'm hungry, I'm hurting, thank you, I love you. Imagine yourself being imprisoned inside a body which doesn't obey your orders at all.
That's actually really scary.
Yet you feel
I mean, like, would you get scared if you couldn't do none of that? Like, you couldn't say, like, I love you, I'm hungry, like, that would be actually be really scary.
Wouldn't be easy, would it? Well, I lived for years feeling this way.
Dang.
Years of wishing for the ability to connect, to express, to share
Like,
with
you
others.
can't say anything.
Maybe you're wondering about the reason? Well, it was that I fell off the tree. I was my
What
mom
tree?
and dad's only child. We were a middle-class family, and we lived in a small house with a stunning backyard, which had an old oak tree that was said to be even older than my grandparents.
Dang.
When my dad first bought the house, he found a tree house in the oak tree built by the kids who had lived in the house before us. After a
Okay.
lot of convincing, my father agreed to fix the tree house. He even made a wooden ladder so I could climb into the tree easily. I remember
Okay.
helping my dad decorate its walls with posters.
I mean, like, I would
and
rather
photos
make
of my
stairs.
favorite band. For a second, you might be thinking, what a sweet family. But no, this wasn't the case exactly. You see, my mom was a moody woman who yelled a lot, and nothing me or my dad did could please her.
I
She
mean,
would
like,
spend
why? Nope. And here comes that. I hate ads, dude. I hate when I get an
cigarettes in
ad.
front of the TV and then sleep the whole day. As for my dad, he spent his time working so he could pay the bills and buy us food.
Dang.
And me, well, after I got home from school, there was nothing for me to do but go and play with my dolls in the treehouse. For my 13th birthday, my dad bought me the best gift ever. He bought me a little white puppy that was
Aw,
super fluffy.
that is
I
so
called him
cute.
Snowball. Perhaps this dog would keep me company so I wouldn't be so alone. I loved Snowball, and I taught him lots of tricks. We used to spend all
Man,
day
must be
together
hard.
in the treehouse. We would only go home to eat dinner. That way, we steered clear of my mom's yelling and her long fights with my dad. I watched the sky a lot
Dang.
during my days in the treehouse. Back then, my
Okay.
dad only came home after the sun had set, so I'd watch the stars lighting up the sky. They looked amazing. I knew that those stars were nothing but meteors traveling fast through the
Yes.
sky as they burned, but everything my dad told me about them made them seem magical.
I
One
mean,
time,
yeah, I
I was
guess.
watching the sky with Snowball, waiting for my dad to return home. When he arrived, he climbed up and sat beside me. He said, "This falling star is a wish that just came true for someone out there in the world." "A wish?" I said. He explained a long, long time ago there was a poor
Okay.
man praying to the gods every day. However, the gods were always busy, so they didn't answer him. One day, he screamed so loudly the mountains shook. The gods looked at him
Okay.
and listened to his troubles. They became so sad and cried burning stars. So this way, whenever he saw a falling star in the
Okay.
sky, he'd make a wish and the gods would make them come true. "But can this be possible?" I asked. And he replied, "Legends are a beautiful thing to hear, but not to believe. If the legends are so old, how can we know if they are true?"
Yeah.
I asked.
She's
He just
right.
smiled at me and said it was time to head back into the house. On that same night, while I was lying in bed hugging Snowball, it started to feel like my life was falling apart.
Why?
My mom was screaming hysterically at my dad, telling him that the money he was bringing in was no longer enough and that he should start searching for an extra job. She said that she could no longer go out with her friends because she was so embarrassed. She couldn't afford to buy new dresses.
Well, that's
every
her
time they
fault.
went
She's
out
over
with
here
their friends.
wasting all her
I saw
money.
Snowball looking at me as if he wanted to say,
She's
"What
wa-
a silly woman." The fighting and loud
I know.
screaming continued for a long
She's
time
wasting all
until
her
it
money
no
on, like,
longer
clothes.
mattered.
You don't
I
need
stepped out
any
the
more
window and
clothes.
headed towards the dark oak tree in the backyard. Everything around me was dark.
Oh, this is
Behind
where
me
she...
walked Snowball.
Dude, I hate when I
We
get
crept very
notifications while I'm
quietly
making
so
video.
no one would hear us. And then we arrived at the treehouse. It was pitch black, so I missed a step on the ladder.
Uh-oh.
And then my legs slipped.
Yeah,
The
this is
last
when
thing
she
I
got the
remembered from
coma.
that day was that after I fell hard on the
Oof.
ground, everything around me turned fuzzy. Snowball sounded far away, even though I could see him jumping around me.
Dang.
Then I wasn't able to feel anything. After After a little while, I felt myself waking up. My head
Where'd
hurt
you
and I
wake
couldn't
up?
feel any part of my body. I'd
Dang.
completely lost control over my body parts. Even my eyes, I couldn't open them.
Oh.
I could feel the light around me, but it was too difficult to open my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
What happened to me? Was I stuck in my sleep, or was it worse than that?
It was
Had I
worse than-
died?
it was-
I didn't know much
no.
about death, except that after death, a person drowns in darkness.
What?
This
No.
darkness I felt was
What makes you
different,
think that?
completely different. I could feel my body freezing. Suddenly, I heard someone. If I was able to hear him, that means I wasn't dead. Thank God.
Yeah.
From his tone of voice, I gathered he was a doctor.
Wait, that doesn't.
Parents. He said the damage she suffered to her head due to the fall has resulted in severe internal bleeding in her brain, which is preventing enough oxygen from reaching her body, resulting in a coma. But I wasn't in a coma. I was there with them. I heard my dad crying and my mom inquiring about the treatment fees. I wanted to scream, to call out for them, to say something, anything. But I wasn't able to even talk at that
Dang.
time. Suddenly, I was just a vegetable, unable to do anything.
Dang. That's how. Dude,
People don't think
just
twice before
imagine
talking
that,
or
dude.
connecting with
It's like a
others.
tree.
They
You're
do
like
it
a tree.
automatically.
Can't do
But
nothing.
I had absolutely no way of speaking to anyone.
Yeah.
For the last 13.
Places, everybody, places.
Although this
Anna,
is
ready for
bad.
your close-up? Hi, Cass. Little bro.
I'm just gonna
Thanks,
skip
Grandpa.
this. There we go.
Years, I had been a normal girl. A girl who loved her dad, her dog, and who loved to play. I was happy
Then
and
what happened to her
healthy,
dog?
But now, suddenly, that had all changed. The doctors didn't know what to do. They thought I was completely in a coma, but they
Nuh-uh.
always treated me nicely. All the time I spent in the hospital, I only heard my dad's voice. My mom had completely vanished. I didn't know where she was, and I didn't hear anything.
She's
related
probably
to her.
spending her money
So
on
the
like
day the doctor
clothes.
said there is nothing more they can do, and that it is best for me to return to my parents' home. I heard my mom arguing with my dad. She didn't want me back home. I was, according to her, a burden that she didn't want to carry. But I went home anyway. I was happy because I was returning home. I heard my dad telling my mom that he finished the treehouse because that was the last thing I asked him to do. That's why he insisted on bringing me back home, so I could be near the things I loved. However, things went downhill from there. I lost my ability to move. I failed all the mind exams they conducted on me in the hospital. So the doctors told my parents they could treat me as if I didn't exist. My return home was just a hopeless attempt at keeping my unconscious body comfortable until I died. My dad tried his hardest to keep me comfortable, and that really annoyed my mom. Their friends stopped visiting after a while, and the money Dad was providing was no longer enough. Machines that were keeping me alive were too expensive. Before, I was able to escape my mom screaming and ranting, but today I was stuck with it without them even knowing that I could hear them. The whole thing felt like a nightmare. When my dad first got me Snowball, I thought that he was very smart and could just understand me without even having to talk to him. But my dad used to laugh and say, dogs are about as smart as a 3-year-old. They can feel when you're happy, sad, or scared, but they can't read your mind. Deep down, though, I knew Snowball was no ordinary dog. He was special enough to be able to read my thoughts because
I mean,
he
like,
had this
sometimes
insane
dogs are
bond.
really
Every
smart, but
time
like,
my
not
parents
that
had
smart where
this
they could
screaming
like
matches,
read your
I heard
thoughts.
Snowball sitting beside me and barking in a low voice, as if to tell me that everything would be all right. I was sure that Snowball my body,
Okay,
unlike what
let's do this.
everyone
Okay.
else believed.
I
Never
unpaused the
left my
video.
side.
There we go.
His breathing was my only comfort.
I don't know
For a
why
while,
you
I
can't
was
really hear it,
entertained by
but
my
like,
father when he entered
my
my room
volume
at
is
night
all the
and
way
started
up.
moving my body left and right to help my blood circulate. Once he was done, he'd sit beside me and talk with me for an hour or so
Okay.
about his day, like he used to before. But that didn't last for long. The last talk he had with me was about how tired he was, both physically and mentally. That he was very upset he had lost his little girl. He only
Pause the video. To pause the video, but
that day, I heard him
There we
sobbing
go.
so loudly. Then he suddenly said, I can no longer bear to look at you like this anymore. After that, he stopped talking to me altogether. A year quickly turned into 2, and I felt the person I used to be disappearing.
What?
Not just her body, but also her memories. My mom said that she'd had enough with my stuff taking up so much room, and that she could put the space to good use. My dad wasn't able to refuse, so he just said that he'd move my things to the treehouse. It wasn't long until I was moved out of my room to another one that was more practical and way smaller. It had barely enough room for my bed, machines, and for one person to be able to move around in. That was enough for me, according to my mom. What was worse was that this little room was next to the living room. That meant that I could hear everything. I mean, literally down to the tiniest details. 2 years turned to 3, and I was still in the same place with no one aware of my existence. It was like I was a ghost. Whenever my mom's friends came to visit, they used to ignore me. As if
Oh,
I
they
was
made
just
it part 2?
furniture. I was
Okay, they're gonna do that one.
dead
That
and
the part 2 is
just
gonna be the
dotted
last
around.
one.
Only Snowball remained at my side. My mom and her friends' conversations were ridiculous. They
How long has
gossiped
this
a
video been
lot
going
and
on
couldn't
for?
stop judging their
10 minutes.
relatives. Sometimes they
This
talked
is-
about clothes, travel, and their husbands. I once heard my mom talking ill about my dad. She said he was the reason behind her unhappiness and that she had met some rich guy at a coffee shop. That guy had invited her for a drink and she'd gone to meet him. And now she was seriously considering leaving me and my dad. For me, that was the worst part about those 3 years. Feeling totally powerless and not being able to stand in front of her and not being able to scream, "You're an ungrateful woman. All the
Yes.
things dad did for you, and yet it's never enough. Now you want to leave him because some other guy has more money?" My poor dad didn't deserve my mom, or even me. I found myself in utter darkness, and the darkness was swallowing my dad up whole. I couldn't remember much about my life before the fall. I was so terrified I'd forget everything. I remembered having a friend called Maisie, but I couldn't remember what we used to do or how we'd spend time together.
That's
I
really
remember
bad.
loving science, but I no longer remembered any of the stuff that we'd learned at school. At the same time, my mind clung onto those memories.
That's
At
sad.
the same time, it started creating new ones that hadn't existed before.
What?
I had to find a way to stay here, in this world. Even if I had to create my own world inside my head. Maisie became my best friend. She always visited on Sundays.
Part 2. Come on, why is there an ad? What is this? What is this? Like, literally, what is this? Okay. Let's do this. Click here to watch part. No, I already did this one. We already did that one. Okay, skip the intro.
Much of the fall has resulted in...
Previously.
It was pitch black, so I missed a step on the ladder.
You
and
see
that-
this, so
that
let's
meant
skip.
that I could hear
Skip.
I remember loving science, but I no longer remembered any of the stuff that we here in this world.
There we go.
Even if I had to create my own world inside my head, Maisie became my best friend. She always visited on Sundays. Every time she came, she talked about her classmates.
Oh, it's like
How
in your
Sophie had fallen
world?
in love with Joe,
In your
and how Kit
world
had
or
failed
what?
the math test, so the teacher had punished him by making him solve 10 equations in front of the whole class. Maisie's visits, though they were only in my head, were the best parts of my day. I didn't know that what I was doing in order to entertain myself was actually a kind of exercise for my damaged mind. I didn't realize that I was helping myself get better. If I'd known, I wouldn't have waited 3 years to start doing it. My consciousness was slowly returning. You might wonder, how did I realize that? Well, simply, I felt my eyelids flutter whenever Maisie visited me. Believe it or not, our thoughts have incredible power. But even so, no one knew that I was coming out of a coma.
So,
Ever
like-
since I'd first been diagnosed as being in a
So,
coma,
like,
I was
if I could do that, I would just, if I was in my world, but I was in, like, a coma, I would make a friend, but, like, that friend, I could read its mind.
totally aware
Like, I would
of
have
everything
superpowers in
happening
my
around
mind,
me.
like,
exactly like a normal person. But I was stuck inside a silent body, it seemed. A mind full of life that no one noticed. I started accepting this cruel fate and got lost in my made-up thoughts. Suddenly, I could no longer tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't. There's a fine line that separates memory from imagination, and I clearly overstepped it. But
Okay.
the one thing I was
How long is this
absolutely
video?
certain of was that the fights my parents had
minutes.
and my mom's betrayal were 100% real. After 4 years, my mom had had enough of me. How long must I endure moving this body left and right without any response? She would yell in my dad's face, and he would answer, "Until she dies." Imagine being in my position, not being able to speak to a friend, not feeling
That's
loved
sad.
anymore, not having any ambitions or dreams, no hope of being able to look forward to anything. All my thoughts were miserable ones. I lived in fear. And if I was being honest, I was waiting for death so I could escape from all of this. I pictured myself dying in some nursing home, cold
What?
and
No.
alone. And so that's how I spent those
Don't
4
say that.
long years. Snowball's existence was my only comfort.
Okay.
My eyelids started fluttering a lot. You might think that's not really a big deal.
It is.
Anyone can do that without trying, but that wasn't the case with me.
Like, if you're in
Snowball
coma, then
noticed
yeah,
what
it's a
was going on
big
and started
deal.
to bark for hours and hours without stopping. My mom couldn't tolerate it. My dad came home and Snowball continued to bark. Everyone went to bed and Snowball was still barking. He was just like me, wishing for someone to realize that I was still with them.
Where there's wonder, joy.
I don't care. I hate ads like these, dude.
Feed your joy.
Feed your joy. Wonder. Feed your joy. Now what is
If you
this?
find yourself getting cheated on, every reaction is valid. Every. And I don't care
Every.
what happens. Every.
Wait, why did they put up a
Was the
knife?
opposite of what we hoped.
Wait, was
The next day, his
you know? Let's
barking
just forget
stopped
about that.
completely. I didn't know what had
They
happened
just
to him.
they just
Mom must have gotten
forget
rid
about
of
that.
him. I was really worried about him. Snowball was my only friend, the only one that
Okay, that's
Hey,
positive
he
video.
disappeared. That day, I heard some heated discussion between my parents. You might say that nothing was new, but this time it was different.
Remember,
my mom
this is gonna be the
decided
last
to
one.
leave my dad. She accused him of having never been the perfect husband. She was crazy. He was the coolest dad a girl could ever wish for. He tried to persuade her
This
to
video
have her
again.
voice. It would have been better if she died that day. It's like
Oh.
a curse that won't go away unless I leave. The sound of the door slamming was the last thing I heard that day. I was incapable of changing any of the things around me, or even the way my mom and dad looked at me. I was an invisible, silent watcher to how people acted when they thought no one was looking. Unfortunately, I wasn't just a watcher. Because of my inability to communicate with people, I became the perfect victim. A creature that looked like it was devoid of emotions. For 4 years, my mom used to abuse me mentally and physically. What did I ever
What?
do to her to deserve that? A part
I
of me
don't know.
wanted to cry, and the other part wanted to fight. I was so full of pain and sadness. It was torture. The following day, it was like I no longer existed inside the house.
Why?
My dad was really depressed. He moved me to a nursing home, exactly like I'd expected would happen.
Okay.
I felt worthless now without Snowball, and without people around me. I became even more a shell of my former
Okay.
self. Another year went by, and everyone still thought I was in a deep coma. In the nursing
Well,
house,
not.
everything was so quiet.
Duh.
No voices, no movements, and no talking. Just a stranger who moved me left and right every day and who made sure that my machines were working normally.
Okay.
The 6-year mark came and went, and then the 7th, and
Okay.
everything was the same. I used to figure out that the time from the nurses changing shifts every 6 hours. That meant that on the 4th time I was moved, a day would have passed.
Nutrition that's
What
a
is
step
this?
ahead for their best life.
Okay, it was a short. What the heck? Do a video, then I'm trying to do a video, and then that pops up.
No one cared about me but her. I lived in terror. I knew every day would be exactly the same as the last one, over and over again. I totally lost
Okay.
any hope I had of hearing another person's voice. But then one night, my dad decided to visit me. I had no idea what
Yay.
date it was because I'd lost all sense of time. But
Okay.
it happened to be my 20th birthday. He held my hand
Yay.
and I couldn't believe
20th?
I heard his voice. It felt
Wait,
like a dream.
what?
More. I'll be with you.
Wait, 20th birthday. Last time I remember, she said she was 13. So she was in a coma. Dang, she was in a coma for a long
I
time.
believe you just turned 20. Emotions welled up in me, and suddenly I could feel the familiar fluttering of my eyelids. I had to open my eyes. I couldn't stay like this anymore. My dad had his face buried in my shoulder, and he was crying. He couldn't see my face or my eyes, but when he turned his head, he jumped and ran outside screaming at the top of his voice, "Doctor, I need a doctor!" Perhaps emotions have more power than we realize. My
Okay.
dad's love for me made me open my eyes once again. The doctors ran some tests on me, and none of them could explain what had happened. They only said the damage that her head suffered was apparently able to heal with time. Your daughter is out of her coma. To make sure I was able to hear them, the doctor asked me to blink twice, and I did it. Being able to communicate again, even in a simple way, felt like the best thing in the world. But even more than that was the fact that I was no longer a nobody.
You're
Dad was
back in your
so
body,
excited.
Dan.
He didn't even know where to begin. But my movement and reactions were still limited. It would take time. There were seriously times where I almost gave up, but I had to hold on to this. My dad promised never to leave me alone, and he kept his word. At night,
Okay.
my dad moved my bed towards the window. It was the first time I'd seen the sky for the last 7 years. At that moment, a star fell from the sky. I closed my eyes and wished to be able to speak again. I mean, there must
Okay.
have been a reason for the star to fall at that moment, right? It
Yeah.
couldn't have been a coincidence.
I guess so.
That night, my dad told me about that dark day. He told me how Snowball ran home barking nonstop. My mom tried to
Okay.
shut him up and to kick him out, but he refused. He bit my dad's pants and kept pushing until my dad came with him outside. From afar, he saw me motionless on the ground. He panicked and drove me to the hospital in a
Uh-oh.
hurry. There,
Oh.
they told him that there was no hope. But my dad wouldn't give up. He knew there would come a day where I'd be okay again. He must have gotten sick of waiting for that
Okay.
day. It's true that I was happy for recovering gradually, but even then, I didn't feel completely free. People around me were still controlling everything. When
Okay.
and what I ate, if I could stay in bed, or if I should be sitting on a chair. It didn't matter how many times I blinked, I couldn't say anything except for yes and no. One day, my dad came in all happy. He told me that the doctors had finally agreed to let him take me on a wheelchair around the city. It was the first time in so long that I get to move
Yay.
and finally leave my bed. I was scared. The outside world
Why
must
were
have
you
changed
scared?
a lot.
Yes.
I didn't know if I should go.
Yes,
But I
that's...
needed this. It was time to get back out there. I remember one moment from that day very vividly. My dad left me alone in the car on her way back in order to buy something quickly from the store. A woman passed by, looked at me, and smiled. I didn't know the reason behind her smile back then, and I'll never know. But that small smile, a small human interaction, made me feel
Okay.
better again. That woman's smile is what pushed me to continue. Seeing my dad come into my room was always the best moment of my day. However, I wasn't pleased when my dad entered my room with the press who came to listen to my story.
Oh.
Apparently, they decided that my story was worth being told and shared. The press ruined my peace and quiet. My mom even returned just so she could be in the spotlight.
Wow.
She returned after disappearing for so long, just for fame. The press did help a bit, though. My dad had them help us look for solutions and treatments that might help me get better. My mom, though, well, she didn't exactly show up because she suddenly
Okay.
remembered the importance of family. She was just there for fame, and Dad wanted me to
Dang.
decide if she could stay or not. Mom's answer was, "My dear daughter, do you want your mommy back in
I'm
your
like,
life?"
shut
I
up.
blinked nonstop,
Shut up.
and this
Shut-
meant I
shut-
wanted her to go
shut-
because I knew she didn't
leave.
care if I lived or died.
Leave.
My dad was a person
You
who'd
only
taken
be here
care
for
of
the
me my
money.
whole life.
Leave.
Of course, he had weak moments where he wasn't by my side, but at least he still loved me enough and thought of me all the time. And for me, that was enough. And guess what? My dad got in contact with one of the big companies that made medical devices. They had
Yay,
created
that's
a
good.
device that gets implanted inside the brain and is connected to a special computer. The device sends electric waves to the computer that then says the words out loud. That company
Yay.
heard about my condition in the media and were happy to help me. The first time they tried this on me was pretty funny. Everything I said
Why?
made everyone laugh, but for me it was sad because I never got an answer to my question. What I asked was, what happened to my dog Snowball? My story might be sad. Some of you might believe
Okay.
it, and others will say that it is just a product of my imagination. But what can't be denied is that there are a lot of people like me in this world who no one knows anything about because they don't have the ability to connect with people. It wouldn't hurt to act nicely towards them and not to ignore them because, like me, they have feelings too. My suffering lasted for 7 years, but I truly believe that the star that fell that night was the reason my wish of being able to talk again came true.
I mean, I
Everything
guess.
happens for a reason. Did you like my story? Don't forget to tell me what you think in the comments below. And to like and subscribe to the channel.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. That is gonna be it for today's video. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you can never miss a video when I upload one. And make sure to subscribe as well. Make sure to go subscribe to my friend channel, I Love Man God, and my other friend channel called Mike Plays. Goodbye.